Hello and welcome. How receptive will Israel be to a Middle East peace plan proposed by the United States? President Barack Obama is said to be frustrated over the stalled efforts between the Palestinians and Israel to find a long-term solution and is getting ready with his own proposal. Recently, he drew a direct link between the Middle East crisis and strategic American interests.
It is a vital national security interest of the United States to reduce these conflicts because whether we like it or not, we remain a dominant military superpower, and when conflicts break out, one way or another, we get pulled into them. And that ends up costing us significantly in terms of both blood and treasure.
Well, the U.S. media is reporting that the Obama proposal would offer his blueprint for a possible Palestinian state and would balance support for Israel against America's own strategic interests in the region. Last month, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden criticized Israel after it announced new settlements in occupied East Jerusalem during his visit to that country. Analysts say that the Obama administration's new thinking has also been prompted by the belief, especially in the Pentagon, that the failure to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict has created a hostile environment for the U.S. across the Muslim world. Arab officials say a unilateral White House plan is the only way to end the crisis, but Israel claims such a move could encourage the Palestinians not to make any concessions. Today we ask, is Israel a partner for peace in the Middle East, and will a White House initiative help or hurt the peace process? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or an email, and we'll take your phone calls on the show as well. To examine the issues, I have Gil Hoffman, the chief political correspondent and analyst for the Jerusalem Post, who's joining us from Los Angeles. Here in the studio is MJ Rosenberg from the U.S. media monitoring group Media Matters Action Network. He's also a former member of AIPAC, the powerful group that represents Israeli interests in the U.S. Gentlemen, I welcome you both to the show.
Thank you.
Gil Hoffman, good to have you on the show finally. Let me start by asking about this issue I've been mentioning at the beginning in the introduction, that the Obama administration is working on a Middle East peace plan. It seems that Benjamin Netanyahu's government would reject that on the moves that the Obama administration, would want to set its own timeline and set its own benchmarks for the Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. He says that any agreement has to be negotiated directly between Israel and the Palestinians, of course. But since there's no peace deal possible, what's wrong with the United States trying to do this? Why has the idea been so summarily dismissed?
Well, Netanyahu answered that question in an interview that he gave to ABC this morning. He said he didn't think that anyone seriously believed that you could force a peace plan on the people of Israel and the Palestinian people. Historically, it's been proven true in the Middle East that the way you achieve peace is that you bring the two parties together and that they work out the details themselves. That's what happened with the peace deal that Israel reached with Jordan. That's what happened with the peace deal that Israel reached with Egypt. That's what happened with the peace agreements that Israel has signed with the Palestinians so far. The reason why the people of Israel and the Palestinian people have not negotiated over the past year, the first time in 19 years that there haven't been negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians, has been because Washington mishandled the peace process, because Washington tried to force things from the very beginning, going up against the consensus of Israel, of Israelis on issues like Jerusalem instead of more controversial issues, throwing its weight around in a way that just didn't make sense. And now, after their own failures, now they're going to give up and say that they're just going to force what they wanted to do from the very beginning. I don't think that's professional. I don't think that would bring peace. And if anything, we've seen that when America's tried to force things, it's only led to violence, and that's something that Israelis are quite concerned about.
Let me ask you about either way, there's a deteriorating relationship between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu, between Israel and America right now. In your opinion, is that going to hurt or help the peace process? Is it going to force the parties to make decisions in some ways? I mean, even if it's in the background, or is there that view, or do you believe there's that view that if Israel feels insecure, as it might do right now with America, that it's more reluctant to go into a peace process?
There's no doubt about it. Israelis want peace. All the polls say it. This government of Israel was uniquely placed in order to move the peace process forward. Netanyahu committed himself to that, came out in favor of a Palestinian state, removed security checkpoints in the West Bank, froze settlement construction, and unfortunately what happened was that the American administration, lost the trust of Israelis by making demands that were breaking agreements that Israel had reached with both Democratic and Republican administrations in the past, then making a big deal out of little things that happened, undermining trust, looking for any excuse to attack Israel. And my polls in the Jerusalem Post have found that Obama's approval ratings are in the single digits, that a very small percentage of Israelis believe that he's more pro-Israel than pro-Palestinian. And when that happens, Israelis aren't going to want to take security risks for peace.
Okay.
They want to see reciprocity, and they're not seeing it.
Well, before I get to viewer questions, let me also welcome in MJ Rosenberg. Good to have you here as well, sir. Let me get your take on this, the stirrings that are going on in Washington when it comes to the idea of a peace plan pushed by the Obama administration. And do you believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is a viable partner for peace?
Well, first I have to respond to what Mr. Hoffman said. As an American, I resent the idea of using the phrase, America is throwing its weight around. Israel is the largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid by far in the world. And everybody knows that if the banker owns the house and they call up and they say they want something, you really just can't ignore them and call them heavy-handed. And also, the United States is not proposing to impose a settlement. What Obama is talking about, and what he says, is he would put a plan on the table for both sides to negotiate over. The United States has never, and Barack Obama is not going to, say to the both sides, here's the plan, take it or leave it. He's saying, negotiate it, come up with an agreement. It's hard. It's hard when you're dealing with Netanyahu and the expansion of settlements. After all, the Palestinians rightly say, how can we negotiate over the West Bank at the same time that Israel's gobbling up the land for settlers? And that's why they haven't wanted to come to the table. Obama's idea is the best idea we've heard yet, and I hope he's going to go ahead and do it.
Can he do a deal with, I mean, in the sense, can he facilitate a deal with Benjamin Netanyahu?
I think he can. I think that all he has to do is, to use Mr. Hoffman uses the phrase, throw his weight around. I don't think that's what it is, but I think he just has to remind Israel and the Palestinians that we are the United States. We provide the aid that both parties need. I think if the President of the United States insists on his position, and remember, it doesn't matter what the Israeli community thinks about Obama, the American Jewish community, 68%, according to the latest poll, which was from the American Jewish Committee, supports Obama's position on the Middle East, not Netanyahu's. Obama's constituency, his Jewish constituency, are Jewish Americans. It's not Israelis.
Gil Hoffman's made a point here about a missed opportunity with what Ehud Olmert had to offer.
Well, Ehud Olmert made that offer when he was on his way out as Prime Minister of Israel. While he had the power, he basically offered nothing. And at the very end, he put out a proposal. It was not even in paper. The Israelis always like to point to some missed opportunity the Palestinians had, where they were offered 95%, 98%, 99%. I'll tell you, the only position that's going to work is that the Palestinians get 22% of historic Palestine. That is what they've agreed. That is what the PLO's position has been all along. That 22% includes it includes the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. That's only 22%. They're not willing to negotiate over, they'll give up 5% of that 22. The PLO has said we'll accept the 22% and call it our state. That's a good deal. I think that the pro-Israel lobby, which is called AIPAC, really dominates the discussion on this issue. And the way it works is that candidates for Congress want to raise money to run for office. It's a very expensive business to run for office, and the pro-Israel community gives lots of money. There's nothing illegal about that. That's the way it works. But on the Arab side, there really is. I mean, there are countries like Saudi Arabia which are powerful, but they're not. They lobby on economic things. No one lobbies really strongly on the Palestinian issue. On the Israeli side, it's the third or fourth strongest lobby in the whole United States.
That speaks of some failure on the Arab side to get together then.
Well, I think it's getting a little bit better. I mean, the Arab side is, and in fact, it was in the New York Times today, the Obama administration is the first administration that actually is working with Arab Americans, meeting with Arab Americans, talking to them to get to hear their side. This is very alarming to the Israeli right, but for those of us, Jews, non-Jews, Arabs, whatever, who want peace, this is very good news that the United States is finally trying to be even-handed.